Bonjour. Alors, je vais vous parler un peu du subjonctif. So, again, we've talked a little bit about this already, but as you can see, the subjunctive mood is used to express actions or ideas which are subjective or otherwise uncertain. So, we'll be looking at different expressions that give a will or a want, emotions, doubt, possibility, necessity, or judgment. So some of the expressions like il faut que, il est nécessaire que, those are necessities. Anything with emotion, j'aime que, ça me plaît que, those would also be followed by the subjunctive. And again, remember, we're looking at an indicator clause, okay, that's going to be followed by a second clause that uses the subjunctive. So it's nearly always found in dependent clauses introduced by que or qui, and the subjects of the dependent and main clauses are usually different. And we'll be looking at that in a minute. The subjunctive can seem overwhelming, but the thing to remember is the subjunctive equals subjectivity, unreality. So that should help you figure it out most of the time. You also want to just be practicing it. And the more that you practice it and use it and listen to it, the more it'll sound right. And we'll just be getting used to it. So here's kind of your formula. So the indicator clause, no matter what tense, plus your que, and then your second clause. So your subject and then your verb in the subjunctive form. So il faut que, there's our indicator clause, followed by tu viennes, and that's in the subjunctive. It is not tu viens, which would be the regular present tense. And then we have j'exige que, I insist that, followed by that second clause. Notice that vous partiez is in the subjunctive. There's that extra I for the conjugation rather than vous partez. Okay, so both of these examples, we're not sure that these events are actually going to happen. So what is the uncertain part? It's the fact of you coming or you all leaving. So I don't know whether you're coming, but it's necessary that you do. You might not listen to me. And I'm not sure if you all are leaving, but I am insisting on the fact that you leave. Okay. So there is no future subjunctive. So even if the action is going to happen in the future, you use the present subjunctive. So for example, je veux que tu partes demain. Right? Je veux que, that's a want. So that second clause, I'm going to put it in the subjunctive. Even though it's tomorrow, I'm not going to use the future. I'm just going to say part, which would be the subjunctive of partir. The past subjunctive is pretty simple because it's just like all of our other compound tenses in the past, right? So we're having the avoir or être with the past participle, right? So, et je suis content. So there's a feeling. Que tu aies gagné. Right? So I'm happy currently that you won yesterday. Here's my indicator phrase. It's a feeling. Okay? And my second clause is in the past. So my a, my auxiliary, is in the subjunctive. Okay, now we'll be looking at this a little bit more, but this is why we kind of looked at the infinitives and our prepositions beforehand, because if the subject of the second clause can be used as an object pronoun, it makes more sense to use an infinitive, right? So again, we're always thinking about what is the easiest, the clearest, how can I communicate the best? So rather than saying j'oblige que tu partes, okay, so I am forcing you, or I oblige that you leave, I would just say I oblige you to leave, right? So j'oblige que tu partes would be subjunctive, but we just want to use that form of je t'oblige de partir. Now, one mistake that usually comes up with this is that you cannot have I want you to leave like we do in English, with an object pronoun. So I want you, even though that's an object pronoun in English, cannot be in French. So I want that you leave. Je veux que tu partes. Has to be how you say that in French. Right? So there's no, if you say je te veux, right? That's saying something different. I want you. Okay. Now the second thing is both clauses shouldn't start with the same pronoun. And again, just because it makes more sense to use an infinitive. So you wouldn't say, I want that I have good grades. You would just say, I want to have good grades. So we're thinking about our previous lesson we've been talking about when we're adding in present participles and infinitives and gerunds. All of these things combine our ideas together, right? Even though we know how to make two clauses, sometimes our ideas are clearer if we just use the infinitives because we have one subject who's doing both things. I'm wanting, and I'm also the one getting the good grades. So it just makes sense to have one clause, je veux avoir de bonnes notes. Okay, so that's what both of these are about. Okay. All right, but again, these are things that we'll be practicing. The more that you use them, the more that you might make a mistake and I make edits. Those are the things that you want to be noting to yourself and practicing and studying from. Right, this is just kind of an intro information, but with any grammar that you've learned, that's always the best way to do it. Once you start using it, you learn from the mistakes you make and the feedback that I give you. Okay, so these are some of our expressions that use the subjunctive. Okay, so we can see our commands, preferences, and wishes. I would prefer that, right? It's kind of similar to j'aime mieux que. To need that, to feel like, to order somebody. Now remember, to order something in a restaurant, right? We would say je commande quelque chose. Okay. So usually when we want to say that somebody, I'm ordering you to do something, right? J'exige que tu fasses quelque chose. J'ordonne que tu fasses quelque chose. Okay. To advise, to not allow. Right? Now, again, we might see this a lot with object pronouns. Je t'empêche d'aller à la fête. However, if I'm saying, I'm not allowing your friends, now your friends is not a pronoun. So, j'empêche que tes amis aillent à la fête. Okay? That's going back to this, right? So, you is an object pronoun. Your friends is not. I would want to keep that as a second clause. Okay? To insist on, to suggest, to wish, to recommend, to want, to propose. Interdire, right? To not allow. Oops. Okay, all of our indefinite expressions, so things would start with il. And again, notice all of these adjectives. Okay, so there are many other different things that we could say. Any adjective really that's in there would be expressing an emotion or a want or a feeling. Right? So for example, it's necessary, it's good, it's strange, it's surprising, impossible, improbable, rare, it's too bad, it would be better that, it's shocking, it's strange, it's urgent, it's false, it's possible, right? This is a good one. Il se peut que, because it's just a nice elevated expression to use rather than il est possible que. Right? And then again, all of our emotions. So as we know, there are many, notice all of these être with an adjective, so we could go on and on with all of our different adjectives. Here are just some examples. And again, détester que, right? Just our simple emotions, but we could have lots of other verbs that express how you're feeling. Do we have, avoir honte que, right? Because that's something that we've been using a lot this year with the vocab. Okay. So there's kind of your basic introduction, some things that we've already talked about and a couple of new things and a lot of your different expressions. So you'll have this sheet. And I already gave you some of the introductory conjugations. And I think, okay, I'll shift F. Okay. So here are some more of the conjugations. So our regular, right? Notice that the ER verbs pretty much stay the same. We just need to remember that I. And then for that pattern, we're just looking at, they really all seem to end with that ER conjugation. We're looking at the E-E-S-E, 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 right? So that's a pattern. We're always thinking about with conjugations, what are the patterns we can use to help us remember these? Okay, now a couple little things to remember with some of the irregulars. Boire, it follows the same pattern it does in the indicative. So when we say je bois, but nous buvons, right? So we already know that the new form has a B-U-V spelling, so that stays the same here. And it continues to follow the same pattern of E-E-S-E, I-O-N-S, I-E-Z, E-N-T, right? So again, any of the changes that happen in the boot that we've already learned, they're the same here. So je dois has the O-I, but nous devons has the D-E-V. Okay, so a lot of times what's happening is we're just adding a consonant and then that E at the end. So you're hearing it more. And that's also why it's important orally, because it does often sound different, right? The difference between je prends and il faut que je prenne. Okay. And then some of our irregulars. Now notice that sache, right, looks familiar. Right, we've already seen this form of savoir, like with en sachant. And also, if we remember, or if we've talked about the commands, right? So like be nice, sois gentil. That's the same as the subjunctive. Know the information, sache l'information. That's the command form. Good. And then, so we have the one thing that you want to be careful about is avoir versus aller. So everyone always gets them confused. They're those A verbs, but really aller, right? Aille. Okay. Remember that the double L has that y sound. It has the L's in it, and so that's why it's your verb aller, right? And if it doesn't have the L's, that's your avoir. Notice also that avoir and être have the Y's rather than the IONS, right? Just for pronunciation's sake. So, il faut que nous ayons, il faut que nous soyons. Okay. So you'll have both these documents. And now just shift over to look at some examples. Okay. So this is especially useful as we start talking and as we have been and giving opinions. So when we're talking about things that we want to see happen. So let's giving advice to somebody or saying how you feel about different subjects. So that's kind of when you want to think to yourself that you're probably going to have some subjunctive use, right? Whenever you're giving your opinion about something. Okay, so let's say we have a couple different. Je supplie que. Il faut que. Il a honte que. Tu n'aimes pas que. Il se peut que. Okay, so we know that all of these. Okay, that second clause, because, right, they all have that relative pronoun que. We know that it's going to be followed by a second clause with a subject and a verb, and that verb is going to be in the subjunctive, because all of these things are indicator clauses that indicate whatever follows is going to be subjunctive. So what could I be surprised about? I am surprised that you are here. Okay, so you are here, except, oops. Okay, I had that indicator. I am just expressing, I'm not stating the fact that you're here. I'm expressing how I feel about it. So rather than just putting it as the indicative, I need to use my subjunctive. Okay, So I'm surprised that you're here, and actually, it's necessary that you go home. Okay? So it's not that you are going home, right? It's I am expressing that I feel that you need to go home. It is necessary. So I'm going to put that in the subjunctive. Okay? Notice that it is always coming after the que. After the que. Okay? It's in that second. It's the thing that I have a feeling about. So he's ashamed that he came in the first place, right? So I'm not stating the fact that he came. I am expressing to you how he felt about it. So I want to communicate to you that this is an expression of feeling, that he was ashamed of it. So il a honte. Well, I wouldn't. Oh, here's a good example, actually. So il a honte qu'il soit venu. Okay, now here, as I was coming up with my sentence, right, I ended up saying that he's ashamed that he came. Okay, now notice first of all that I put it in the passé composé because he's currently ashamed that he came in the past. However, here, like we've talked about, I have two clauses that are both talking about him, how he feels, and the action of him coming. So rather than saying he's ashamed that he came, right? I just want to say he's ashamed to have come. And this is what we had just finished learning about, right? This, right? So an adjective followed by an infinitive. What is he ashamed of having come? And it is the past infinitive because he's currently ashamed of something he did in the past. Okay? So again, here is what I would want to say rather than having two unnecessary clauses with the same subject. Right? So it's the same idea as what we were practicing when we were saying, right, j'écoute de la musique pendant que je fais mes devoirs. Right? We're just going to say j'écoute de la musique en faisant mes devoirs. Right? It's the same idea of combining those clauses. Okay. So again, with a subjunctive sentence, so you don't like that I told him to leave. Okay. So I told him to leave. Je lui ai dit de partir. Except because of this indicator clause, this verb needs to be subjunctive. Okay, and I can double check. I have two different subjects, right? It's possible that, say, he, now notice if I say he here, even though it's il, it's not the same thing. Il se peut que, this is my indefinite, it's an it, it's an unknown. Il is the subject pronoun replacing him, he, right? Whoever this person is that nobody wants at this party for whatever reason. Okay, so il se peut qu'il has to leave. Qu'il doit partir. Except because of this indicator phrase, right? I am not just making the statement he has to leave, so it's ils doivent partir. Okay, it's possible that he has to leave. Right. And then again, I just want to go back to the example with the object pronoun. So, let's say, mon père interdit que j'aille à la fête. So my father is not allowing me to go to the party. So I could just say, mon père m'interdit, right? He is, rather than saying, my father does not allow that I go to the party, right? No need for both of those clauses. Mon père m'interdit d'aller à la fête. So here's why we learned about right? All of these verbs followed by infinitives. Okay, interdire à quelqu'un de plus infinitive. Okay, so my father does not allow me to go to the party. Okay, so there's and remember that exception I gave you. Let's say il veut que je reste à la maison. Right? He wants that I stay at home. And there is no way for me to say il me veut que. Right? We can say he wants me. Okay? But that means something else. Or we could say il m'en veut, which is our expression, he's mad at me. Okay, so this is the exception to that. We cannot say he wants me to, right? Which would be the English. There's no equivalent to that in French. And you'll also see in this example that this is the subjunctive, but because rester is a regular ER verb, I can't tell the difference. Okay, so we don't actually have to change it. Okay, so j'espère que ça aide. Si vous avez d'autres questions, n'hésitez pas, mais n'oubliez pas qu'on va beaucoup l'utiliser. On vient tout juste de commencer et on apprend en l'utilisant, en écoutant et en essayant, en faisant des fautes et puis en apprenant après. Merci.